Doomfist is by far one of the most controversial characters in all of Overwatch's history, but as of recently, it seems that while the transition to tank has treated him well in some regards, although some of the DPS Doomfist fans may hate me for saying that, there are still a lot of people that hate Doomfist and even call him an easy to play character, and I honestly don't agree with this. However, there's a very important reason why that perception is still around, and there is a lot of truth to that perception, and we're going to talk about what we could potentially do about that, not just from a character design perspective, but what you as a support DPS or tank player, you yourself can do it in your games, because I think this is an important conversation about our biases, about how understanding how the game works, but also understanding exactly what goes wrong. Like, if it's just a skill issue, then why is it always focused on Doomfist? And if everybody agrees that it's a Doomfist problem, then maybe there is some fault to be played here. So I'm gonna talk about a couple of reasons why Doomfist is broken, but we're gonna focus on exactly why it impacts lower and mid ranks so much. Because Doomfist, while having a relatively high skill floor mechanically, is a character that absolutely oppressive, dang it, ah! He's absolutely more oppressive in low to mid ranks. I think that's just objectively true. Doomfist, even when he's relatively good, falls off really hard and higher ranks, and we're going to talk about why that's the case. So here's the problem with Doomfist in a nutshell. He is too feast or famine. Everybody applause. Woo! Yeah. And by that, you're like, oh yeah, if you hit your punches, you're great. If you don't hit your punches, you're good. Yeah, that's true, but that's actually only half the equation. One of the problems with Doomfist is the feast or famine is actually contextual on what the enemy team does. And you're like, well, duh, whether you feed punch or not. Ooh, that's also true, but that's not all either. Doomfist is contextual upon whether you actually take off angles on Doomfist or not. And I'm gonna back this up with real facts and logic, guys. So when I'm talking about feast or famine, it's a lack of angles. It's mechanical mistakes, like as in you messed up your shots, you messed up your cooldowns. He's a fast moving character, it's easy to miss. It's empowered punch, and this is the big juicer. This is why the lack of angles matters. AoE value. Let me explain what AoE value means. Area of effect, it's an old MMO term, maybe it's been around for a lot longer than I don't know. But the concept of AoE is that you have abilities that don't just affect one person. In other words, when I go in with my weapon, generally my bullets are only gonna hit one person. But if I build a punch, the way punch works, the way slam works, the way ult works, the way even empowered punch, like using your block works, is you can hit multiple people with the same ability. And the reason why this matters is the more the enemy team is spread out, the more isolated the value of his abilities get. Let me say that again. An empowered punch that only hits one person has half the value of an empowered punch that hits two. Now that sounds obvious. There's no way there's more context in that, right? But the reason why this is so important for Doomfist is that more often than not, and I've been coaching this game for thousands of hours, I've reviewed hundreds of Doomfist VODs. The reason why the situations where Doomfist feels the most oppressive is when he's hitting multiple targets with his abilities over and over and over again. Now the question is why is that the case? Well, we're gonna talk about that. People counter swap poorly into Doomfist. But before we do that, let me talk about 4 mistakes that people make into Doomfist, and then we're gonna review about how you can actually do this better. Because if you guys remember, last week I had a really bad game with a Doomfist player in my team, playing versus Doomfist player, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is why this feels so bad. This entire video was inspired by that game. It was so bad. Number 1, people counter swap poorly into Doomfist. Now, if any of you guys were like, wait, take off angles on Doomfist? No, if I get isolated, he's gonna isolate me and kill me, okay? So that's definitely the type of person that's gonna disagree with me here. We'll get to that one later, by the way. But for right now, let's focus on the counter swap side of things. People only counter swap Doomfist more often than not with a focus on survivability. Now, that's not always the case. I do see people sometimes going on it. I do see Cassidy being a very frequent swap, who's actually fairly frequent. It's not bad versus Doomfist. But one of the most common swaps that I see, especially in low to mid ranks, is people will go Moira. People will go Kiriko. People will go Brick. People will go, heck, even Bastion. Like anything Reaper that can live the Doomfist. And let me explain why this is a problem. Doomfist's vulnerability isn't just through your ability to survive his engages. It's through your ability to space out, take angles on him, and then crucially, to kill him. If you don't kill Doomfist, it doesn't mean that you're incapable of denying his value. I mean, living is still useful. But the problem is that in Overwatch, there's an overwhelming tendency to focus on the survivability over the value itself. I cannot tell you the amount of times, and you guys can probably back this up, where a support duo or a friend or a random teammate is going to swap Moira or swap Brig or swap Bastion or fill in the blank survivable character X, because now I can live the Doomfist engages more. But that's just allowing the Doomfist to live his engages more, and with the frequency of his cooldown cycle, just means he's going to go right back in and can do more. So you're going to die by 1,000 paper cuts rather than a punch in the jaw. So I'm not saying that these are always terrible swaps versus Doomfist, but you cannot say that in a vacuum they're always the optimal play, especially if you don't know how to play those characters effectively. Number 2. And this one is the most important one, probably. We'll talk more about this one in the review, but number 2, they don't take angles. When you stack up versus Doomfist, you're going to get empowered punched. You're going to feed punch. You're going to get AoE slam. You're going to get AoE by his ultimate. Every aspect of Doomfist requires him to set up on off angles and then get close to you with his punch. And if you all clump up like scared rabbits and like sheep, you're going to get run over. And that is the consistent thing that I see in basically every situation that Doomfist players play into when they're oppressive in the lobby. And that's why he's so inconsistent, because it's actually not just his RNG, whether he's hitting his punches, but about whether you're giving him or whether the map is giving him that space. We'll talk again more how that works. How do I take angles without getting punished? Well, it's going to be way easier to demonstrate that in the review, which we'll get in a little bit. Number 3, and this one's really, really problematic for certain DPS characters, but even more so for tanks. One of the biggest ways to give Doomfist value is to chase Doomfist when he is not killable. How many times have you guys seen a tank, a Ball, Winston, Ryan, Roadhog, Sigma, whatever, run around the map chasing the Doomfist, trying to finish him off? If the character's low, 1 HP, and you have the mobility to do so, sure. But one of the biggest ways to enable Doomfist is to pursue him and chase him in situations when you're not in a good position to do so, because the opportunity cost of going out of your way to go deal with the threat more often than not enables this entire backline to not only kill your team, but pocket him more, which is why he never actually do anything. So is it bad to pursue Doomfist? Absolutely not. I just said take angles and shoot him, right? That's good. Punish him, right? But only do so if it's convenient for you, or he's in a position or in a situation where he can actually die. Otherwise, you just trade his backline or pressure his DPS or control space. Doomfist almost never, unless he's a smurf, right? Never solo carries a lobby. It is very easy to focus on Doomfist because he's the biggest, the loudest, the strongest. That's the tank situation. But he always has a support group that is providing as much, if not more value than he is. And if all you do is you fixate on the most obvious problem, you're falling for the trap. So pressure what is convenient to you and cut off Doomfist's support line in whatever way that you can, or deal with the Doomfist directly if you're close to him. And the 4th mistake, and the most obvious one, and by the way, remember the Zarya analogy here? You feed punch. It's not always bad to shoot punch, and there's situations to get a little bit of tickle to force the punch out. Obviously, I understand for certain projectile characters. Now listen, this is not an advocacy for Doomfist's current design. I think Empowered Punch is super toxic because it makes playing versus the character super unintuitive. In addition, Empowered Punch, unlike Zarya Bubbles, doesn't provide consistent space creation. Nobody forces you to shoot Zarya Bubbles, but she is going to take space off, and the Doomfist is just going to buy time for CDs. It's not quite the same. But yeah, Doomfist's Power Punch is really toxic, and your team may or may not feed it. And if they do, they just dramatically increase the value that Doomfist is going to get, which is just a really toxic game design, and why your mileage may vary. The only thing I can say is don't try to tell your dopamine receptors to not shoot the punch. By the way, why do people feed punch more often than not as opposed to bubbles? Because bubbles don't sound good. At least they don't sound as good as Doomfist Punch. Doomfist Punch sounds crunchy to shoot. It's, dopamine, juicy, right? Unironically, that stuff matters, man. That stuff matters. So yeah, they counter swap poorly. They don't take angles. They chase the Doomfist. They feed punch. And so I challenge you guys to, whenever you're playing versus Doomfist, to at least do one of these things. So you need to play the character that you're good at. Don't counter swap unless you're playing swap to a character that you're very, very good at playing. Take angles, take space. So make the Doomfist isolate you where your team can see you. We'll again demonstrate how that can be done. Focus on your screen. So if you can deal with Doomfist, great. If you can't deal with Doomfist, don't chase him. And finally, don't shoot the punch. Now, what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to go into an actual game where we had a Doomfist running our lobby. And I'm going to demonstrate exactly what my team needed to do to play the Doomfist, outplay the Doomfist better, including a couple of fights where we actually did it relatively well and it ended up working out. So this was Diamond 1, I want to say. First things first, let me ask you guys a question. We'll look at one character here. I would want one character to help me take an off angle to shoot the DPS, to shoot the tank from the side, and to get better vision. Because let me ask you guys a question. If my Doomfist here decides to go in very deep here, he's going to get the attention of how many players? 3, 4, everybody. Everybody's going to be here. How easy will it be to feed punch it? Very easy. If for whatever reason he gets empowered punch and punches my Wuyang, where will my Wuyang go? Where will my Kiriko go? Right. Any support could go in here. See, the difference here is if my Wuyang walks to this position here, or my Kiriko walks to this position where I am here. If the Doomfist focuses them, can my Wuyang pocket my Kiriko here? Can my Kiriko disengage? And vice versa. Can my Wuyang disengage? Can my Kiriko pocket my Wuyang here? Yes, 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 yes. Notice that we're not necessarily always isolated where nobody can see you. You know, my team can see me. I mean, even me, right? Like, if the Doomfist comes after me, I'll deflect and I'll go to where my supports can heal me. But I want him to go for me, and only me, or somebody to the side, because I don't want him getting AoE value here. And crucially, if you're a support player, and you are playing in a situation where you are stacked and accidentally getting AoE'd by Doomfist, not only is that bad because of the AoE value, but even for a character like Kiriko, Kiriko survives by baiting people to a location that she can easily leave. You understand what I'm saying? So for this situation here, if my Kiriko is here, she has a safe teleport, because the Doomfist will use cooldowns to try to kill her, and then the Kiriko will use a cooldown to get away, and the Doomfist has to wait before he keeps going. Whereas if my Kiriko's here, if she decides to go in, she's going to go in blindly to an angle that she has no idea about, or go directly into the enemy backline. You get what I'm saying? So the reason why as a support and a DPS player, it's important to take little off angles soon versus a Doomfist, it's just, by the way, a good principle always, is because it allows you to use your cooldowns to run away, whereas there's nowhere really for my Wuyang or Kiriko to go if they get engaged here. The problem is that people presume proximity with safety, and it's not. Sightlines are safety. Characters that can pack each other and heal each other and shoot whatever's shooting them is great. So it's not always necessary, but it's more often than not good to be able to see each other. But you have a very long string. Use that. Use that. Can't you just still Cassidy first? Looks smoothly had the idea. I mean, what do you mean? As a support? I mean, yeah, I mean, my support could go here, but the problem is that this is too far. So my supports would have to use a cooldown to get here, which then means that the Doomfist might chase them and kill them. So we need my DPS and my supports to start to take space, start to take some off angles. Make the Doomfist make a choice. Because you see, this is my mistake. I shouldn't have gotten punched there. I'm able to finish off a kill. I promise you this is not going to be a glazing session. This was not a good game for me. But like when the Doomfist focuses me down here, notice that I'm able to get all the resources in the world, and Doomfist is vomiting everything he can on me, and only me. And only me. Which then means my supports are just relaxing. They're shooting, they're healing, they're not under any pressure. They would be even under even less pressure if they'd gone with me. But yeah, I'm prioritizing pulling attention away from my supports so that my supports can help me. But it's not just about the DPS doing that. It's also the supports themselves. And it's not an accident that, you know, my Winston took space to the side. My Genji took space to the side. And the Doomfist is not a threat here. Now, I would highlight here that I probably took too much damage. And then my supports maybe over-fixated instead of helping my Cassidy so he doesn't get help in time. But we end up winning this fight because we're able to comfortably control lanes, and Doomfist is, he doesn't know what to do. This is why Doomfist doesn't perform in Grandmaster, because the higher rank that you get, the more angles that you see, the more space that you see, and Doomfist just does not have a consistent way of dealing with damage from multiple angles. Watch this from Doomfist's perspective was also good, yeah. This is, by the way, this is really good from my Kiriko. I think she mechanically screws this up, but let me ask you a question. Where can my Doomfist mitigate damage right now? He's getting off-angled by myself. He's got pressure from Winston on here. And if he chases Kiriko, what does the Kiriko do? Well, she just leaves. And then she takes a different off angle, right? The problem here, and this is what so many DPS and support players do when they're playing versus Doomfist, not just support players, but DPS too, is they do this because she got too close. She got whip-shotted, shot in the head, and Doomfist got her. And they go, oh, I shouldn't be off-angling here. I shouldn't be off-angling here. No, you screwed up. You screwed up the execution of what you're doing. But you know what's good about that? You were confronted with your error. And I killed the Tracer. Nice job. Good job. We love that, right? But the problem is that the Kiriko's going to go, oh, I died. I must have done something wrong. I'm not going to even attempt that type of play at all. And that's what guarantees the Doomfist value. We'll keep going here. We get a couple of trades here. Doomfist is able to finish up some kills. I just think the casting missed a lot of shots here. Actually, unrelated to the review, I'm like, why is this Doomfist not being punished? We missed the Hinder, which is really important not to miss. We shouldn't have even used Hinder there. By the way, that's another thing as well. You don't have to panic with your CCs. People panic with CCs so much with Doomfist, but... Okay, we're not going to throw stones, but that's a situation where you notice that because we're split, my Winston takes the full attention of the Doomfist. So that opens up. I mean, to be honest with you guys, I should have punished this more as well. But like this is Doom dies there. He has no cooldowns. He has nothing. He has nothing. He's inside bubble. He's DPS passive. He is being shot by Wuyong and by Doomfist. I mean, or Cassidy. There's just no way that he lives. And you can kind of see it there. The Cassidy was completely under no pressure whatsoever because he was split from his Winston, which is why he should have died. That's just a mechanical failure. Just a mechanical failure right there. Notice how I die. Accidentally end up next to my Wuyong. I think we fed punch too as well. AoE punch. Yeah, he should absolutely be dead right there. And more often than not, he will be dead right there. Okay. This gets really saucy in second round. All right, what's the problem? Let me ask you guys a question. If this Doomfist engages with Nano, with ult, with anything, how many people is he going to hit? How many people is he going to hit? Everyone. Everyone's cooked. And the worst part about this is it's not just about the Doomfist. People always... the reason why Doomfist is such a problem with this is because he's so freaking loud. Everybody looks at him as the problem. The real problem here is that I can't die this on a Brig. I mean, I could distract. I'm trying to harass. I even get the Tracer to fall back. But this is freaking impossible for me to contest this safely because my entire team is like focusing on this Doomfist. And so my Winston goes in, my Genji goes in, but my supports are still stacked. So the problem here is that then for my supports to help the dive, because they didn't set up prior to the dive, look what my Wuyong has to do. He doesn't have to do this, but look at the problem here. He can't do anything. So he has to use a cooldown to go to where he should have already been. Where he could have baited the Tracer, baited the Doomfist, and then run away if he needs to back to his team. So the supports are way out of position pre-fight. You guys are just playing way too fast. It's not even the support's fault. That's incorrect. One of the biggest things that the support player needs to do is use their time wisely prior to the fight. In this situation right here, we have 2 minutes. Or we're 2 minutes in, sorry. 1:59. And we're going to wait 1 pressure, 1 trade, 10 seconds, 12 seconds. 12 seconds of preparation and time to take space. Why would you want to walk into Brigitte on the left room and then just take the rest of the map? You can. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not really going to engage because the point is to showcase a concept here. You're asking why a diamond player isn't performing perfectly macro-wise. So that's just a sunk cost fallacy. Now, if you're saying, oh, instead of helping off of the dive, maybe one of my supports rotates here instead and leans towards point instead of following up here. That's correct. That's correct. That's not the point of the review. So I'm not going to get sadly baited because you're asking why aren't we doing this high level concept when we're not even doing the base level concept? You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. So whatever. We go too deep. Wuyong has to reach. And it's not just Wuyong here either. Wuyong has to reach. Kiriko has to reach. Suzu's wasted. We end up getting the kill, securing the kill. But the problem here is that we're once again in a situation where we're in AoE value. You see this? So we're constantly being herded by, as in clumped, because we've been incapable of splitting off and forcing. Nano, Doomfist, and Tracer is going to kill a support. Hello, Hadi. It's going to kill somebody. Somebody's going to die. Just make sure it's not everybody. The problem here is because we've been unable to hold space, split, and we've chased. Now, the pulse bomb, the nano, kills everybody. Everybody dies, and is so incredibly convenient too. It's consistent. You might die as a support. You might die. You might die as a Cassidy, right? You might die as a Genji, right? But if you can force that resource to be somewhat expensive, play cover, disengage, play distance if necessary, then that can work. Very, very unforced here. Okay. We're going to rotate as 5. That's fine as long as we split off once we're ready to fight. This is a huge mistake for me. That forces Suzu unnecessarily and my deflect unnecessarily. But, you know, once again, we're kind of just... Well, are we split? No, we're stacked. Yeah, this is just support cattle being rounded up for the Doomfist clip montage, basically. This applies to DPS as well and tanks as well. My Winston was doing a relatively good job here, but I think even my Winston ends up falling for the slop later on. I think we'll highlight that one later. What do you guys think of this? Who did the Doomfist Tracer focus here? Tracer focuses Wuyong. Resources being put... Look at what my Wuyong is doing here. Look at this, look at this, look at all these resources my Wuyong is living, he's living. Look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that. His only problem is that he rotated to isolation. So I actually want to highlight what my Wuyong did right. He forced resources. He helped me to 2v2. The problem here is that he rotates to isolation. So this becomes a situation where he needed to rotate towards our team and then back off. But even despite that, even though this isn't optimal, okay, whatever. At least it was an expensive death, right? Like, frankly, my blade was really bad here. We should have done so much more. That was a 4v3 for a long time. So this is what I'm going to take responsibility for. My Winston deserves responsibility. My Cassidy deserves responsibility, right? That was a really good angle from my Wuyong, and you saw it. He didn't immediately die. He rotated and lived and dodged and harassed and lived, and we just didn't capitalize off of that. So that's our bad, you know? Yeah, he could have ulted himself for sure. I think the reason why he didn't was because I don't think he thought that the fight was lost in that situation. But I mean, respect, right? Like we actually tried to kind of help me control an angle, and I beefed it, you know? So that's just that. But you could see immediately how Doomfist wasn't really relevant in that fight. Tracer wasn't really a huge factor in that fight. I mean, they were definitely factors, but they weren't single-handedly killing the backline over and over and over again. It was largely mitigated because the Doomfist Tracer had to make a choice, and the Wuyong ran away. This one is even more criminal because this is like the definition of the problem here. Because you have now a map where the angles are a little bit harder to get to. They require a little bit more risk. And then we also have a situation where we're going to see a couple people make swaps to worse characters. So the first things first is the Moira. Is Moira bad versus Doomfist? Not necessarily, but it's because she could take those angles and kind of bait attention and live. Moira here isn't more tanky versus Doomfist because she's 225 HP. Kiriko's 225 HP. It doesn't matter. You're going to get exploded. This is a swap because, oh, I need to live more. No. Yes and no. The reason you're dying is because you group with the entire team and you're getting AoE'd every time. And then my tank is also going to kind of fall for the slop as well. And I want you guys to look at like what I'm going to highlight here, because I think there's a couple of fights here that are truly criminal. So Genji on the angle, Winston walking forward, Cassidy kind of peeks here, and I want you guys to tell me if you see the problem here. Do you see the problem? Do you see the problem? If I'm Doomfist right now, where do I punch? First off, we already have Empowered Punch. I actually don't even know how we already have Empowered Punch. Might have been Wuyong. I think it was Wuyong. No, it was Cassidy. Okay, so Cassidy fed punch. So already we failed the check, right? I'm trying to angle on him. Winston's kind of poking from this side. I go to a short range angle up top here. I mean, you can already tell what's going to happen, right? You can already tell. We have Empowered Punch. We've not taken any space here. We've not taken any space here. We're hurted all together because we're scared of the inevitable. And by being scared of the inevitable, you guarantee it. Man, oh man, if I had a dime for every time that's part of like life's philosophy, you know what I'm saying? And right, oh jeez, like this is so bad. It forces fade. It forces ride. All right, no, it doesn't hit the Wuyong, so we get lucky. But it forces fade. I mean, look at this from this perspective. Cass is one. Cass dies. Forces fade. Forces heal orb. Chunks some of our Winston's HP. And it's just, oh my gosh. They literally line up for it. Look at this. It's just agony. Listen, it's okay. If we've fed punch, let the Cassidy take it. Let the Moira take it. Let the Winston take it. Let me take it. Let the Wuyong take it. But we can't give them all of them. We can't give them all of them. It's too much. And so then that creates enough AoE value, enough resources to where we're already down one. Guess what? Does it again. We're still in the exact same spot that we were before. And now we don't have the cooldowns anymore because the first cycle forced the fade and the orb in the first place. So yeah, we already saw the blade Tectus, the horrific blade on the end of first point. All right, now you can already see where I'm going with this. Now, instead of just criticizing here, let's offer some solutions. Doomfist, Tracer are highly mobile. How can we help our team walk out of the choke here? How could we do it? How would you guys do this? Think about it. How would you retake space here, Israel? There's a tracer over here. Oh no, right? How'd you do it? Well, solo, Moira, solo, by yourself. Because I know some people in the comments are gonna be like, my DPS never take angles. What do? Do it by yourself. Carefully, cautiously, intelligently, in a position that makes sense for you. Honestly, solo Moira, worth it. Cautiously and patiently take the dual tracer with heal orb, ego it, be careful. Anything split here. I think we might have already fed punch. We've already fed punch again. Oh dear. Ah! Turn off the dopamine receptors, guys. So look at how we take this. AoE pressure on the slam. Winston's trying to go out of the choke early to get some pressure on Doomfist. Winston's like, come on, punch me. Don't punch my backline. Don't punch my team. So we look a little bit tracer. I take the high ground here. Like Benny Hill music here going on here. I mean, this is just disastrous. The only thing that maybe is if we get a hinder out here, but we're still in a position where they can AoE cleave us, we're fricked. Check it out. Oh my gosh. And this is why people hate Doomfist. You will not find a character in this game that can do that much burst AoE pressure, and people don't think there is not a character in the game that can do that. I guess maybe a high charge Zarya with an alt fire. It's insane. Now, to be fair to my Winston, and we do get a split push here. My Winston tries to take an early angle. He does, which allows him to just walk on backline here. And then we get a nice little combo here. We get 2. Love that. But we're fricked. Like, this Doomfist used 1 cooldown to force everything. Everything. And the thing is like, this is what, I guess this is what I'm trying to highlight here, is that safety isn't always in numbers. With seeing each other can be helpful. But if you're stacking, it's not safety. It's not safety. And obviously this is just one example. But this is, again, I've coached this character and played versus this character and coached versus this character. I coach versus this character at the professional level. Back in Overwatch 2 early alpha, Doomfist was very strong. And one of the things we had to say is that, like, even though he can one-shot you at that high level, like just, one punch, you kind of have to sometimes sell somebody if he gets pincered and inted on. This is so frustrating, man. We did so much here. But that's just how it goes. Yeah, the ability is silly. Yeah. See, this is working kind of, sort of. Look at our setup here. So my Winston and we get 3 trades, so we're able to recontest here. Look at the setup we have here. If the Doomfist wants to engage, yes, he can maybe get 2, but he has to choose, Like, look at my Wuyong's angle. Look at my angle here. This is actually okay. Doomfist eats it, or Winston eats it. Doomfist gets traded. A lot of people shoot. Lamp and ult is forced. Great. Now, I think I rotated poorly here. I think I was too slow I lagged too far behind. I should have deepened immediately, and so I got poked out. I should have been immediately here and going top. And then even here, right? Like, the Doomfist ult lands on the Cassidy, and then the Cassidy dies. Now, the Moira ends up getting picked because she misplayed her resources. I think she just tried to heal my Cass and just got shot. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah, like that's fine. Like, again, like, okay, at least we could punish this guy now. You see it? Like, look at that. The Cassidy lived. He freaking lived. He got solo ulted and he freaking lived. He freaking lived. No AoE value for you, buddy. And that's it, right? We make him choose his engages. You get what I'm saying? You can't have your cake and eat it too. Now we screw this one up overall. And this is where the mistakes start to happen, like, for my tank, because this is where my tank goes, I don't know if this was the only reason why he swapped to D.Va, but I need to peel for my backline. Okay, D.Va's fine here, but I hope that we don't throw another body into the AoE dryer. You get what I'm saying? So that's kind of the main thing here. You know what I'm saying? So D.Va walks out a little bit. We do the same thing. I'm stacked here, and I try to walk out an angle as well. There it is. And then just, jeez. Like, I mean, look at the top right, guys. Look at the stun. It's over. We're freaking cooked. Now, I'm curious, did he get punch fed again? Yeah, he did. Here we go again. Here we go again, you know? And so then, now I should not have died here. I'm gonna take full responsibility for this. But this is kind of exactly what I'm talking about, where like, you're like, oh, we didn't die for it, right? Well, the problem here is that now I'm suffering because my backline is in Guam. Why is my backline in Guam? Because we got 4-man AoE punched. So I'm like, you know, well played by the Doomfist. I get my deflect forced. He punch cancels my deflect. I should have just dashed out there, but we're right back where we started. And then once again, more AoE value. I'm curious, does he get into the punch here? I actually don't know. It's just more of the same. More of the same. Just more and more and more AoE value. He's not even aiming for the Moira there. She dies to it. And here we go again. Doom punch expanding and hit needs to be reduced. Yeah, 100%. Like this is both simultaneously a critique of Doomfist's design. By the way, I guess see something funny here. Here's my off angle. This is both a critique of design and Doom, and also an explanation of what you need to do versus this character. And we get the Tracer here. I think that's it. I think we try to AoE touch because we're touch, but we're grouped up because we're trying to get to the fastest path to point. And then we waste both of our support ults. And then again, like because we're in such a rush to touch point, which to be fair, I think if we'd been a little bit more thoughtful, myself included here, I think we could have realized that my ball had touched, so we didn't all need to go here. I mean, this is a death trap, bro. Like we could have sent anybody here, or here, or here, but this is just like, this is the blender, bro. I mean, look, this is a freaking blender. Now, to be fair, we do angle. We got a little bit of an angle. Now, we ended in the open and got AoE punched off the map. But hey, at least she took one for the team there. But yeah, that's all. So, TLDR, to wrap things up, take angles where you can see your teammates. So if you do get isolated and pressured, you can still packet or shoot or punish the person that's getting help or heal them, but that such that you are not a casualty of an accidental value. That you are the person being targeted or the group being targeted. It is not, oh, I accidentally got hit by that slam, or accidentally got hit by that punch, or accidentally got hit by the ult. This is just a good general rule. But Doomfist, by far, out of all the tank role, has the most AoE punish in the game. And so this is why this character feels so incredibly oppressive in low ranks in those situations, because he doesn't just affect your tank or your backline. In everybody's group, he affects everybody, every single time. So a lot of your agency as an individual player, things like Empower Plunge, maybe you can't help. You know, your teammates counter swapping, you're not taking space, you can't really help. But you can see in situations here, even though I was displeased with how my backline was playing, or obviously I made a lot of mistakes myself. That's not what we're talking about right here. But like in situations where I was able to take space, I was able to at least pull the Doomfist away, or like bait him, or pull, like first fight, right? So even if your teammates don't behave in the way that you want them to, you're not gonna be able to send this video to all your ranked teammates. But you, as an individual, can still increase your impact on these unwinnable Doomfist games by simply following the principles yourself and following them well. It's not easy to do this. It takes execution of time and practice. Anything worth doing takes time and practice. But this is the answer if you're able to do it. This is the answer.